I'm Jeffrey Wasserstrom, and my book is China in the 21st Century, What Everyone Needs to Know. I wrote this book to try to dispel some common misconceptions about China while also giving, in a very concise format, a lot of basic details about where China's been and how its past influences its present. Well, I begin way back with, even though the book's about the 21st century, I begin with, it's in question-answer format, commonly asked questions, and informational but also hopefully somewhat surprising answers. So one of the first questions is, who is Confucius? I can tell you when he was born, what some of his main ideas were, but then in the more surprising way, I suppose, I ask, was he always revered in China? And the Chinese government would like you to think he's always been revered, but in fact, at various points in time, he was ignored, and a couple of times in the 20th century, he was reviled. So that's an example of the kind of thing I do. I had several different kinds of readers in mind. One was sort of the average reader of the newspapers who is vaguely interested in China and wants to know a little bit more than what they're getting in the stories. They want to get the kind of story behind the story of something that makes news and then disappears. But another target audience is the traveler about to go to China for the first time, or perhaps about to do business in China for the first time. I didn't really expect it, but it's getting some uses in classrooms as well, high school classrooms as well as college ones, as a sort of textbook for teachers who hate textbooks. Well, I drifted into writing doing a kind of writing that academics these days often don't do, in the form of newspaper articles and magazine pieces, opinion pieces, that actually tried to explain some things in ways that journalists often weren't doing and academics weren't doing in ways that ordinary people would be engaged by and come across. So in some senses, if I had started out, this book is totally unlike a dissertation. The kind of work I did where it was deeply archival and aimed mainly at other specialists. But it felt quite natural to do it after having done short-form writing of this kind. So it's an effort to see if I can take in book form the kind of communicating I was doing in newspaper magazine pieces, interviews for NPR, and that kind of thing. I think there were some surprises to me in trying to think about, there wasn't new information I discovered, but when I kept trying to think of analogies to use to sort of tweak the way Westerners typically think about China. And I think some of the most provocative parts of the book are things that I would readily admit are imperfect analogies, but I think help get you to think about China in a different way. So for example, when I'm trying to explain how it is that Han Chinese think about Tibet as a region and get away from the way that it's often portrayed in soundbite-driven media, I say we might think about the Han vision of Tibet as being a bit like mainland American visions of Hawaii, so that it's viewed as a place with attractive customs, attractive scenery, but in many people's minds, a place that wasn't really part of the modern world until it became part of this larger, more modern entity.